Hi, guys, and welcome to Sunday Tea with Dr. Jodi-Maree. If you don't have your cup of tea, press pause, go and boil the jug, and come back and join me. Last week, we talked a little bit about the inner critic. This week, I want to talk about something that some of you might find a little challenging. Certainly, I did when I first discovered this idea or concept. And that's the concept around what happens when an emotion arises, both biochemically in our brain, but also with our inner voice. What happens when that emotion arises? So, emotions are normal, they all have a purpose, they all have a reason for being there. And we don't really need to fear them, but sometimes because of our history with a particular emotion, so anger, fear, grief, sadness, we might fear when they come along. And I think that that has a lot to do with not the initial response, because the initial biochemical response is generally brief in most cases with an emotion, lasting on average about 90 seconds. And that's the biochemical reaction um, for classic grief or classic sadness, classic emotions. But what happens when we engage with that emotion um, can really depend on our relationship with the emotion. And I know that sounds a bit odd, but yes, we have relationships with emotions. And that's based on our past experiences, past hurts, past traumas. And there's two common ways that we often deal with emotions, and that's that we can suppress or deny them. And that's a frequent response when there's an emotion that has caused a trigger or a trauma in the past. And the second response is really to feed it. So we can feed it through lots of different ways. So by repeating the events that caused the emotion, um, we can repeat that in our head, or we can repeat it through conversation, so rehearsal. By rehearsing that emotion with other people and telling them how angry we were and continually keeping it alive, we're perpetuating that emotional response. When we deny an emotion, it doesn't just disappear. So emotions that are unexpressed or unresolved can often accumulate, kind of like financial debt. Um, what I call this is emotional debt, and that's emotions that are unresolved or unresolved traumas and hurts can accumulate in a way that causes harm to the individual. And over time, that leads to an emotional debt, and it can be very difficult to overcome that emotional debt. And that can happen because the brain looks for confirmation. I don't know if you've heard of confirmation bias, but the brain looks for confirmation of our emotions. So it'll do that through replaying those stories with self in your own head or with others, or we'll listen to sad music if we're sad, or we'll watch sad movies if we're sad. We'll rehearse the conversations with others. That's all confirmation bias. And it's a normal part of brain activity, but it's very unhelpful sometimes when we have unexpressed or unheard emotions. There's a different approach though. You can just notice an emotion. You can allow it to rise and fall in the natural form and the natural way that an emotion can do. And this is what I now do when I engage with an emotion. It's without judgment. So I just allow it to be there. I allow it to rise. I allow it to fall. I let it settle naturally. I don't suppress it, but I don't engage with it either. Emotions aren't the enemy. It's our relationship with them that causes us trauma and harm. So I'd like going forward for the next week to set a little challenge, if that's at all possible, um, to perhaps notice one or two emotions in the week and just notice how they come without judgment, without engagement, and without suppressing. Allow them to come, allow them to go. Notice whether or not you engage with them. Notice whether or not you repeat them to others or within your head. And notice what happens for you when you don't engage with them and you allow them to occur at the rate at which they naturally flow and disappear. And put a little comment in the Facebook page if you can um, about what you notice and how that works for you. So that's the challenge for the next week, if you choose to accept it. And I hope that you enjoy developing a healthier relationship with your emotions and allowing them to be present when they're there, allowing them to disappear when they go, and trying not to engage too much with them. Emotions can be our friends, and they can be just like the inner critic. We can, to an extent, we can decide how we interact with them and whether or not we allow them to be there. All right, guys, so have a lovely week. This is the end of Tea with Dr. Jodi-Maree. I'll see you next week. Take care and be kind to yourselves.